Excellent morning, dear participants, distinguished members of Hala Ops, retired directors, serving officers. It's a pleasure to welcome you to webinar for retirees this morning. I want to wish our Muslim brothers happy Eid al-Malud. I hope I'm pronouncing that very well. It's a pleasure having you this morning. Thank you for joining. Our topic this morning is viral hemorrhagic. We already have an expert in the house, a medical doctor, who is going to facilitate this session. She is Dr. Ufwa. I hope I'm getting the pronunciation well. Sorry about that if I'm not getting it well. Let me take us through citation. She's a compassionate primary care physician who is passionate about advocating for underserved communities, especially in the realm of preventive medicine. She earned a medical degree from All Saints University College of Medicine, Vincent and the Grenadines. When she is not busy with her medical practice, you will often find her in the kitchen indulging her love for cooking. Please welcome with me Dr. Destiny Ufwa for this presentation this morning. Please, you can unmute and go ahead with your presentation.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm happy to be here. Happy Eid al-Malud to my Muslim brothers and sisters. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Ma.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to be talking about. Okay. Can I share my screen now?
You can go ahead.
Not allowing me.
You have 40 minutes for your presentation.
Okay. It's not allowing me share my screen.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
You can do that now.
Okay. Okay, so today I'm Dr. Ufwa, and today I'm going to be giving a lecture on viral hemorrhagic fevers. I'm sure we're familiar with this. However, most of us may not be aware of this common term, viral hemorrhagic fever. Most of us must have heard about Ebola, Lassa, yellow fever. They all fall under this umbrella. So I'm going to give a brief overview and focus more on the prevention and how to go about management of this group of illnesses. All right, so basically these are the things we're going to focus on today. This is the outline. And just like the name, viral hemorrhagic fevers. So basically it's a group of virus that causes this whole constellation of symptoms like high fever. And when we say hemorrhage, we're talking about bleeding. Okay, so these are viruses that can cause really serious illnesses that can lead to bleeding and very high fevers and other complications, even as far as affecting the organs like the kidneys, the lungs, and even in very, very severe cases can lead to death. So these are the families that these viruses fall under. There are tons of viruses and they fall under these different families. So we have the arenavirus family, we have the pilovirus family, which we know the Ebola virus falls under that. We're going to talk about that too. Then we have the Borneo virus family, we have the flavivirus family, where the yellow fever falls under, and then we have the rhabdovirus family as well. Okay, like I said, this fever comes with a lot of bleeding disorder, can come with shock and death. If somebody loses a lot of blood, we need blood to transport oxygen to every part of our body. So imagine losing that amount of blood. The person can just shut down and, so we have the mild ones, and like I said, they can go on to life-threatening issues like kidney issues and death of an individual. I'm going to give a broad overview. Not everyone is common to us in West Africa, so I'm just going to mention it with more emphasis on the one we're familiar with. Okay, so these are the different families, and these are the viruses that are listed under the different families. So for the arenavirus, those ones are not really common here in West Africa. These are the viruses listed underneath. Since it's going to be a short lecture, we're going to focus on the one that is common to Africa, just like I said, West Africa. For the Borneo virus, we have the Premier Congo, we have the hantavirus, the Rift Valley fever. And then for the filovirus, which I'm sure we're very familiar with, we have the Ebola virus. And then for the flavivirus, we have the yellow fever, the dengue, Nyanso forest disease, and the OMSK hemorrhagic fever. Okay, so for the arenavirus family, the Lassa fever, like we know, was identified in Nigeria in 1969. Most of us think that this is this is probably a new virus, but it's been there. It's been there for a while. Okay, and then it's transmitted by rodents, not just rats. A lot of us say, oh, Lassa fever is transmitted through rats. There are other rodents too that could be responsible for transmission of this Lassa fever. So we have squirrels, we have mice, we have hamsters. Okay, and how is this Lassa fever transmitted? It could be through direct contact with these rodents I just mentioned, or it could be contact with an infected material. So let's say there was a rat here that probably excreted or urinated, and then unknowingly you go touch or just come in contact with that material, which is called fomites. That could also be a mode of transmission for this virus as well. Okay, so also human to human contacts could also be the case for this Lassa fever. We're going to talk about prevention and how to go about just management as subsequently. All right. So the case fatality for Lassa fever is really high. Okay, it's about 5 to 35%. Also, could also occur with hospital outbreaks. So, which is why we have isolation centers during Lassa outbreaks. We don't mix individuals with virus and individuals without the virus in the same room. We always isolate them because this could also be a mode of transmission to those without the virus and spreads really fast. So incubation period for this virus, when we say incubation period, we are just technically saying the time frame from when you come in contact to when you start manifesting this illness. That's what we mean by incubation period. Okay. If anyone has any story or personal experience with Lassa and you feel comfortable with sharing, you could put it in the chat box as well, so that we could see and how you overcame it, or if it was a loved one, if you're comfortable sharing, you can put it in the chat box. Okay, so this manifests as fever, and weakness for the first 2 to 4 days, which is why we always advocate for people to, when you feel unwell, it's always good to come to the clinic, the nearest healthcare facility close to you. I know a lot of people say, oh, I know my body, I know this is malaria, I know the way my body is when I have malaria, but it might not always be the case. It's always good to be proactive about your health, take the test and see what exactly, because it could be an undiagnosed severe issue. It might not even be malaria, because people actually come to the clinic and say, I've been treating myself for malaria and I don't feel better. So it's always good to be proactive, do the test and know, so that we could find out either clinically or through the test, we could be able to tell what is really going on with the individual. So for this Lassa fever, okay, it has the phase where there's high body temperature and tiredness, and then there's the hemorrhagic stage where individuals will start bleeding from within their body, like their mucous membrane, they're bleeding in their skin, bleeding in their joints, and other like neurologic issues, okay, confusion, seizures, and just general feeling of unwellness as well. So for the Bunia virus, this is not really common to us here in West Africa. We have the Hanta fever virus, we have the Crimean Congo virus. I'm just going to quickly brush through that. And then I'll talk about the Bunia virus quickly. Like I said, this is transmitted through mosquitoes, the Aedes mosquitoes, and this Aedes mosquito, can see an image here. It's also the same mosquito that is responsible for transmitting the yellow fever virus as well. Okay, so it could be direct exposure to an infected animal or through the bite of this Aedes mosquito. Okay, so we're going to move on to, like I said, the ones that are more common to us here. We're going to talk about filovirus, which is, I'm sure everybody knows about the whole Ebola situation that happened between 2014 to 2016, which surprisingly is the largest Ebola outbreak we've ever had. It's affected over 28,000 lives and claimed over 11,000 lives. Countries that were affected, like Guinea, we have different West African countries that were affected, even Sierra Leone, Liberia, and I'm sure even in Nigeria too. Nigerians were also affected by that outbreak of Ebola, but thankfully it was contained by some doctors that were selfless enough to put themselves forward to make sure that this virus did not spread beyond control. So we have the Ebola, we have the Marburg virus under this family of filovirus, and then we have the Ebola virus, we have the Ebola Zaire, and we have the Ebola Sudan, okay? Then we also have the Ebola resting that affects animals. That one doesn't affect humans. And then in 1994, the Ebola Cote d'Ivoire as well was also discovered. So for the Ebola, I'm sure we've heard about transmission through bats, through fruit bats, and just generally the mode of transmission is either through human to human contact or contact with infected materials, which is why it's always good to maintain distance, okay? Even in the absence of an outbreak, it's always good to be proactive, because you really don't know. You might just be an underdiagnosed situation, or a situation that might be that's the first contact, okay? So even when you're in the bus, it's always good to maintain distance and avoid body-to-body contact with other people, because they might be sweating and all of that. So it's always good to maintain that distance to prevent the spread. It could also be through the hospital, also get from the hospital, because like we know, there are a lot of sick people in the hospital, and during admission, they come in contact with a lot of materials in the hospital. Then the newly admitted people, the newly admitted patients, they also come in contact with those materials, and that could also be a mode of spread. Okay, and then also the waste of through human waste of their infected individuals. It could also be from the waste of these bats, which can unknowingly to you, you might come in contact with these things and might get infected with this virus. Okay, so the mortality for Ebola, we have about 23 to 33%, which is high. And the one that took place in Sudan, Cote d'Ivoire, and Africa was about Sudan and Cote d'Ivoire was about case mortality of 53 to 88%, which is very high. 88% is really high. I'm sure we all can remember what happened during Ebola. And then the bad thing about Ebola is that the incubation period is so short. So from contact to manifestation to severity and even to death, it just happens within a short period of time. Okay, and it affects different organs in the body. It can manifest as just fever, chills, muscle pain, just common things that you wouldn't term serious and think that, oh, you just have something very common like a malaria or something, which is why I will always push for you to seek care whenever you feel generally unwell. Don't assume for yourself and go to the pharmacist and self-medicate. It's not always advisable to do that, okay? So hemorrhage can occur, that is bleeding from different parts of the body can occur, because it's also a viral hemorrhagic fever, like I explained in the beginning, and also death within 7 to 11 days. So this thing happens very rapidly. Okay, that's why prevention is always better than cure, because getting the appropriate treatment within or care within that short period of time might not always be feasible, depending on your location. All right, so the Ebola resting, like I said, affects primates. That one doesn't affect human beings, about 82%. Affects monkeys and the likes. Okay, so we'll go to flavivirus, which contains the dengue, the yellow fever. I'm not sure if dengue is common to us here. It's not really big here, but we are schooled in the Caribbean island. Dengue fever was a big thing. Chikungunya was a big thing. It was like the malaria there. It was a very common thing and it was very serious. I have a couple of colleagues that passed away from this virus as well, because it wasn't easily identified and just got complicated really fast. All right, so for the yellow fever, it was discovered in the 17th to 20th century. And by 1927, we were able to isolate the yellow fever, and then by 1943, we were able to isolate dengue fever. So probably before this time, they had constellation of symptoms where they manifested, and they weren't sure which was the yellow fever and which was the dengue fever. But at this date, we were able to isolate which was what and differentiate both of them. Okay, so how can this be transmitted? By a tick. Okay, it's an insect-borne virus by the Aedes aegypti, which we talked about previously. So the yellow fever virus affects Africans and mostly in Africa, okay, and some cases in America, which is why if you're traveling across country generally, they always ask that you get vaccinated for this yellow fever, against yellow fever virus. Then the dengue fever also is common in Asia, some parts of Africa, the Caribbean islands, and the case mortality for dengue fever is about 1 to 10%, which is not really as high as that of Ebola or Lassa. So we can see that the Lassa and Ebola virus, they are more, they're associated with more case fatality in that group. So for the incubation period of yellow fever is about 3 to 6 days, which is very short as well. Okay, and the dengue hemorrhagic fever, the incubation period is about 2 to 5 days. So from contact from an infected individual or contaminated material to manifestation will take that short period of time between 2 to 5 days. Okay. So now we're back to the main gist. What should you look out for? How do you know you probably have this virus, you've been infected with this virus. What are the things that you should, what are the red flags? Okay, so number one, we have very high fevers, we have severe tiredness, weakness, dizziness, muscle ache, just generally feeling exhausted, that feeling of exhaustion. I can't do anything. Oh, doctor, I feel very weak. I can't do anything. I can't go to work. So these are some of the general symptoms. And the sad thing about it is that they can be very vague. So you don't know that you have these things. They can be very vague and present like any other illness. Okay. So for the more serious cases, we have bleeding under the skin, bleeding in the eyes, and even bleeding in the internal organs, okay, and orifices through the ears, through the nose, through the private parts. And blood loss, like I said, can cause death. So we all know that blood is responsible for circulating nutrients and oxygen to every part of our body. So imagine if our body, our vital organs, is deprived of this source of nutrients, source of energy, source of life. Okay. So you can also, with Lassa fever can also cause pharyngitis. And then generally can affect the brain. The brain tissue can get affected as well, which can, like I said earlier, it can present with a lot of neurologic symptoms, confusion. This person is behaving like they are not well. They are behaving like their head is not correct. And they just woke up this morning and they're not acting like themselves. That could be a sign as well. And then jaundice, yellowing of the skin, yellowing of the eyes, and just different parts of the body. So these are the signs to look out for. Okay, but however, you don't have to wait for it to get to a very serious phase before you seek help. Once you start noticing any changes in your body, like I said, fever, feeling of unwellness, tiredness, we encourage that you come for medical checkup. All right, so this is an example of bleeding into the skin. Okay, so why do you bleed? It's because you lose the platelets that is responsible for clotting of the blood get depleted. So you can't clot. So in areas where you ought to clot blood, you're not able to clot blood. So it's just like blood is leaking to different parts of the body. And this is an example. So you can see bleeding into the eyes, bleeding into the skin. Sorry. Okay, you can start coming up with your questions and put them in the chat box. Okay, I will answer, attend to all of them. There will be a time for question and answers. So this is peteke. You can see pinpoint hemorrhages on the skin here. And then the palms, you can see yellowing of this person's belly, which is jaundice. So how is this diagnosed? First of all, you can't diagnose this in an individual if you don't seek care, if you don't seek medical attention, because there are some tests that needs to be run for us to know what exactly is the case. Okay, so we have serology, we have the polymerase chain reaction, and then during that period, we isolate the individual pending when the test is ready, just in case there's an underlying or underdiagnosed situation doesn't go out of control, pending when the result is out. Okay, so these are some other tests we can do. We can do the full blood count, check for, like I said, the platelet count. You can check for the kidney function, because most of these illnesses, they affect the kidneys as well. So just taking a blood sample from you, taking it to the lab, and checking a series of tests, we can be able to know what organs, or if the organs in the body have been affected as well. Okay, so because these viruses are highly contagious, there are safety precautions that needs to be taken in order to contain or prevent spread amongst individuals, even with those that are taking out time to be in the front line to make sure that everything is well. They have to be suited up in spacesuits to avoid contamination from their own end. So if you suspect any of these in an individual, if you suspect anything, even within yourself, it's always good to report to the nearest health authorities. Okay, so the treatment for viral hemorrhagic fevers, how do we treat? First of all, we encourage you to be very proactive about your health, about this viral hemorrhagic fever. So cover your food, especially your dry food. We always advocate that if you get gari from the markets, like in my house, my mom will always fry the gari again, just in case, because a lot of these viruses, they don't survive in heat. So it's always good to fry it again or heat it up again to kill any virus that is there, to kill any contaminant. Then you also have to make use of insecticides, avoid bush burning, illicit bush burning around house areas, because when you burn bushes like that, you drive the rats from the bushes, you drive them to the homes, okay? And then avoid staying in areas that have stagnant water. This can also breed insects that can transmit cases of let's say yellow fever, for example, which is transmitted through the Aedes mosquitoes. All right. So also we shut our doors properly and our windows because we try to avoid these animals or these some of these vectors or some of these animals that are associated with these viruses. So we're trying to prevent them from coming into the house and causing harm. So supportive care. Treatment is usually supportive for most of these viruses. We try to maintain fluids because a lot of them bleed and they lose a lot of their body volume. So we try to replace the fluids. We try to correct any electrolyte imbalances. When we mean electrolytes, like the sodium, the potassium, those things that just is responsible for maintaining body homeostasis. We try to balance them. We try to bring them back to baseline. So we monitor their fluid levels, their urine outputs to see, oh, are they making a lot of urine? If they are making a lot of urine, this is a good sign that, okay, the kidney function is being restored, or, things like that. Also ventilation, dialysis for those who have issues with kidney, whose kidney has been affected, and then also steroids. And we also treat for secondary bacterial infection because most of the time, especially when these viruses, these infections get to the lungs, they can open up they can open up an avenue for bacteria to be superimposed. So just imagine an already existing virus is getting complicated by bacterial infection. We don't want that. So for the treatment, like I said, supportive care. Okay, we replace everything that's missing. If the blood level is low, we give blood. If the platelet that's responsible for clotting blood is depleted, we replace. And then you want to avoid things that will thin out the blood or things that will make you prone to bleeding, like let's say ibuprofen, diclofenac, even aspirin. So we avoid those things already because these individuals are already prone to bleeding. So there are also some vaccines that, thankfully, there's some vaccines that have been made available to some of these viruses. So for the Bolivian hemorrhagic fever, there's passive immunity. So it means that we give a serum, it's like an immunoglobulin that will help to produce those antibodies, that will help to produce those antibodies to fight these infections. Also, with yellow fever, there's an active immunization. When we mean active immunization, it means that the yellow fever virus is killed, so it's in the active form, but we suppress it, and then we introduce it to the body so that the body gets acclimatized, and when the person actually gets exposed to the virus, it's familiar with that virus enough to fight it, and it doesn't have to overwhelm the body system. Okay, so we also have, thankfully, we also have the Ebola virus vaccine that's been introduced in December, that has been approved by the Food and Drug Administration Agency. There's two of them. There's a single dose one that's called the FBO, but that one, it's peculiar to just the Ebola zero vaccine, okay? So it's just one dose and it's used in an outbreak. So if there's an outbreak that is currently in season, it gives an emergency result. But the second one that comes in 2 doses, it's the Zabdeno, which is the 1 dose, and then 8 weeks later, you take the second dose, which is the Vambia vaccine. That one comes in 2 doses. So we can't use that one in an emergency situation because it's 2 doses, so it doesn't give as much a rapid response like we would want it to. All right. So prevention and control. We briefly touched on the prevention earlier. So we want you to control rodent population. What do we mean by this? Avoid illicit bush burning, okay? Because you drive these rodents from the bushes to the home, especially when you live around that area. So you shut your doors, shut your windows, make sure you clean your environment very regularly, soap, water, disinfectants, wash your hands, avoid, close contact with infected individuals. Someone is infected, it's a good time to stay away from them to maintain that contact without making them feel like they have, without stigmatizing them. Because that's one thing that a lot of people go through with this whole virus. When they get infected with these viruses is the stigma. So they don't even talk about it and they continue living amongst us. So be careful and be compassionate enough not to stigmatize those that, are infected with this virus. Also, we also discourage consumption of raw meat. Like we say, we know there are some people that eat meat from birds, like bats, monkeys. Even in that case, we advocate that you boil and cook very well. Because like I said, most of these viruses, they are not stable under heat. Immediately, if you apply a lot of heat to it breaks down, it kills the virus. A lot of them do not survive with heat. So use insect repellents, wear long sleeves, and just avoid keeping stagnant water lying around. Okay, so in order to reduce human-to-human transmission, like I said, you maintain distance when you're talking with or communicating with an infected individual. Okay, so and this is also a time that you have to practice safe sex. You have to abstain from sexual intercourse with an infected individual. And even for the Ebola virus, even after they've been treated, it's always advised to maintain that, sexual abstinence for about a year, because sometimes the semen, until their semen is tested and they are cleared and they are negative. Okay, so you always seek medical advice, always follow up with these cases as well. Like we talked about protective clothing, we know the yellow fever is caused by an insect. It's transmitted by an insect. Okay, so long sleeves, protective eyewears, insecticides and repellents as well. So this is just a general overview, like what we've talked about earlier on. Okay. To disinfect, so this slide is just talking about disinfection, how you can go about decontaminating affected areas, or if you suspect that, even if you don't suspect, it's always good to decontaminate your surfaces from time to time. It's always good to maintain good hygiene. Okay, so we also encourage face mask. So like the N95, then you maintain that distance. I think we've touched on all these things already. And then isolation, while they are being catered to, isolate them so that we prevent that spread. Okay. So like I said, it's important to always seek medical advice, because most of these things occur they have the same symptoms, they share the same symptoms. So in order to differentiate one from another, in order to even know if you have it or not, please seek medical advice. Don't self-diagnose yourself. I've seen it. There's two kind of patients I see on a regular basis. The ones that come and say, "Doctor, I have malaria. Give me anti-malarials." And the ones that come and say, "Oh, I feel this way. I would like to get tested. I don't like taking medications indiscriminately. I want to know what is wrong with me before I take any medication." And it's always good. Like the second group of people, I always commend them for taking that approach, because it helps you to actually know what's wrong with you, as opposed just wanting to treat yourself vaguely without knowing what is the real source. Then there's this ribavirin drug that has been very known to be very potent for Lassa fever. Okay, so this is an image during the end of an Ebola outbreak in Gabon. You can see how happy the children are. And okay, so to come to the end of this slide, thank you for listening, and I'm welcome to answering your questions. Okay.
So thank you very much, Dr.
Okay.
Destiny Ufwa, for that very short and very informative presentation. You actually kept to time. Still have 4 minutes more, but that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you
So,
very
like she
much.
said, you can keep your questions coming now. You can type, you can request by signifying. I will ask you to unmute and then ask your question. For me, I think I took some very, very important points. In fact, when I saw the topic, I was wondering what it meant. Now we know that it's a group of diseases. Lassa fever is there. That's the one we know, very common. Ebola, you know. And she did mention the fact that when we buy gari in the market, I'm trying to mention some of the things that really caught my attention. You don't really know where those garis are made from. You don't know whether rodents have entered. And then some of us, we just soak gari and drink. For those who make eba, well, they may escape. But if you have to soak the gari, that means if you have to soak gari, then you need to put it on fire again and then ensure that you keep it in a very concealed place that these rodents will not be able to, attack. I think that's one wisdom I got from there. I've never thought of refrying gari after bringing home, you know, from the market. And then, she also did emphasize some of this group of diseases can actually present the same symptoms. So testing is very important. Test and know exactly what is wrong with you before you go for uh, medication. And then I want to believe this education we are getting here is not just for us. Let us also inform our family members so that we can prevent the spread of these viral diseases that we have spoken about this morning. And then she also did mention distancing. We have always believed that it is only when there is an outbreak that we should ensure this distancing. So from what she told us this morning, distancing is very, very key. Let's keep doing it. Let's keep doing it. Outbreak or no outbreak is very important. And then hygiene is key. All those rodents, you know, if we allow them into our homes, it means that we should not even tolerate them. If they have a free day moving up and down in our homes, they can actually spread these diseases. So, uh, I've not seen anyone signifying, but let me look at the chat. Doctor, you can also be checking the chat too.
Okay.
Then I also want to say that we are live on YouTube. I've shared the link on the normal platform that we use for our announcement. Make sure you subscribe to that YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. You can always go back and listen all over again. You know, sometimes this kind of thing, it takes you listening to it twice or thrice before you can actually assimilate and get all the information. So let's go back to it. Let's share, let's share the link with fellow retirees, with serving officers too, and our family members, so that we can all keep safe and keep healthy. I'm still expecting our questions. Let us keep it coming up. Okay? Somebody
Okay.
is okay.
Since somebody is asking how effective the vaccine is. Okay, the vaccines are very effective, to my knowledge. The yellow fever vaccine is very effective. The Ebola vaccine is very effective. However, with the two-dose Ebola vaccine, you might need a booster, okay? Because over time, the immunity might wear off, you might phase off. So you might be needing a booster after your second dose over time. But it's very effective so far. Especially when you're with the yellow fever vaccine, especially when you're traveling to endemic areas or areas that have recent outbreaks, it's always good to get vaccinated if you're not vaccinated. Recently, I went to Ghana and they didn't even allow me pass the border without my yellow fever card. So this is just them taking that proactive approach to make sure that they don't introduce this virus, this viral disease into their country again. So yes, the vaccines are very, very effective. They've been approved by the Food and Drug Agency. Okay. So you can keep your questions coming. And if you've had any experience, you can also share and let us know how you overcame that. You can help other people in the same boat or in the future. It can also be of help to them.
Okay. There are no questions coming. Dr. Ufo, I think on a final note, what advice do you have for our retirees?
Okay. I'm going to say it's not easy to come this far. Okay. I always advocate for better health. The truth is that as you get older, your body is open to a lot of illnesses because your cells, your antibodies, the soldiers in your body are not as strong as they used to be. So it's always good to be at the top of your game. Even outside of Lassa fever, outside of Ebola, outside of viral hemorrhagic fevers, even with other diseases, with other issues like diabetes, hypertension, heart issues, it's always good to take a preventive approach to these things. So, in terms of the kind of food we eat, we can actually build our immune system with the kind of fruits we eat. With better immunity, we can be able to fight these viruses, we can be able to fight illnesses, and we can be able to keep our health at par. Okay, so introducing a lot of fruit and vegetable into your diet, going for monthly checkups. Okay, don't let yourself go. Please be very vigilant about your health. Be very, very vigilant about your health. There's a lot of things that you can catch incidentally by just going for monthly checkups. I've seen people that come just for regular checkups and you discover that this person has this kidney issue, this elevated blood pressure, this diabetes, or this illness that they didn't even know about. So I'll beg that you take, a more proactive approach to seeking medical care, even when you feel like there's nothing wrong with you. Okay? Thank you.
All
That's my
right.
service advice for you today.
So
Yeah.
thank you very much, Dr. Ufwa. I hope I'm
Yes,
pronouncing your name well.
you're very correct, ma.
Okay.
You're very correct.
So um let's have someone to appreciate Dr. Ufwa among the participants. Please just signify I will invite you. Okay, I can see someone's signifying. Let me find out who the person is. Okay, I think this is Mrs. Olubunmi Olawole. Can you please unmute and appreciate our facilitator? You can stop sharing.
Hello, good
You can
morning.
stop sharing your screen. All
Hello,
right.
good morning.
Good morning, ma.
Olubumi Lawale is on.
Okay. So go
I
ahead.
want to say thank you to Dr. Destiny Ufwa for this wonderful presentation. It is so eye-opening and very enlightening. Furthermore, as a retired health educator, I want to also emphasize the importance of hand washing. As simple as it is, hand washing is very, very important. And by imbibing this culture, we can prevent a lot of diseases. Yes, I meant diseases, especially the viral diseases. We did it in the time of COVID-19. We should continue and not stop doing it in our household, anywhere we get to, especially after coming inside from going outside. We should continue imbibing the culture of hand washing, not just sprinkling water in our hands, but using soap, making sure it's lather and then wash under running water. This is quite important and very helpful. Thank you very much. This is my first time of coming and it's quite exciting. I appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Can you appreciate our facilitator for us on
Thank you
behalf of
very
the
much.
state government and all participants?
Dr. Destiny Ufwa, once again, I want to say thank you. Your presentation is so very, very enlightening, very informative, and very educative as well. On behalf of the Lagos State government, the Post Service Department, and especially the presenter, Mrs. Drodola, we want to say a very big thank you on behalf of all of us serving officers and retired officers. It's been a wonderful time with you. We appreciate you and we'll be looking forward to having you probably sometime again on some other forms of infection control. We are very grateful.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
So thank you very much, Mrs. Ilawole.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, ma'am.
On that note,
Thank you.
we have come to the end of this program. Thank you very much for joining all the participants on this call. I greet you all Thank you for always returning. Thank you for always coming back. As we have seen today, the head of service, the permanent secretary, they are both not on this call. The PS is on vacation. And as we all know, the head of service is preparing to go to Abuja. His retirement, voluntary retirement, is going to be effective from the 29th of September. So we are going to miss him. This webinar we are enjoying today is one of the initiative under his own tenure. So we are grateful for this opportunity. And once again, I say thank you to you all. Like we usually do, I'm going to change the setting for us to all be able to unmute and say hello to someone that we have not seen in a while. So the floor is open. You can say hello to someone. Let us put on our videos if we can and say hello to someone.
Hello.
We are all very quiet. Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Hello,
Mrs. Dodola,
hello,
you have been a
Mrs.
while.
Mutin.
Dodola.
Hello,
Thank you
Miss
for
Welcome,
coming.
Obuleye.
Mrs.
This is
Dodola.
I
You are
joined very late.
appreciated. Thank
Happy
Thank you,
you.
to
Mrs.
see you.
Jodola.
Thank
Thank
you.
You're
you,
welcome.
Doctor.
Good morning,
Thank
ma.
you,
Pleasure.
everyone. God bless you.
Yeah,
Eh,
I
Thank you,
collected
Nice
my
Mrs.
connecting
birthday
Dodola.
yesterday,
again.
God
Mrs.
bless
Dodola. I
you.
thank you.
appreciate
You
it.
Bless
too.
I
you.
appreciate you
Yes, ma.
all the time.
Mrs.
Olúwa
Ilawale,
yóò wà
God
pẹ̀lú
bless
yín
you.
o.
You are
Àmín
Thank
o,
welcome.
you,
àmín o,
ma.
ṣògo.
I collected my birthday gift yesterday and I say thank you.
Oh, you
Oh,
are
yes.
welcome.
Thank
Happy
you.
belated birthday.
Thank you, ma'am.
Miss Toluwa ni mí mò ń kí yín o.
Èmi náà kí
Mrs.
mo ń gbàdúrà
Dodola,
Yorùbá
God
fún yín
bless
o.
you.
Àmì mà. Àmì mà.
Olúwa wà
Ṣé
pẹ̀lú
o?
gbogbo wa
Miss
o.
Odutola,
Àmín o.
good
Ẹ
to
kú
see
ìtọ́jú
you.
wa o.
Mrs. Dúródọlá ẹ káàárọ̀ o.
Ẹ káàárọ̀ mà. A
Ó ṣe
kú
òṣìṣẹ́.
program àná.
A dúpẹ́ ẹ ṣeun gan ni.
It went
Ó
very
ti
well.
lọ.
Thank you
Bye
very
bye.
much.
Bye.
Ó ṣe Mrs.
Bye. See
Dodola.
you next
Everybody good
time.
morning
Yes,
o. Kó má jẹ́ pé Mrs.
Good
Dúródọlá nìkan
morning.
mo kí. Everybody good morning.
Oh, thank
yes,
you.
ma. Ẹ ṣé
Thank
mà.
you. Good
Àmì
morning.
Mrs.
May God bless
Oníkòyí
us
ni o.
all and keep
Mrs.
us in
Oníkòyí.
Jesus' name.
We bless
Amen.
God for all of us.
Mhm.
Thank you, ma'am.
Amen.
Mrs. Adekoye,
Mrs.
mò ń kí yín o.
Adékanyè. Mrs. Adékanyè á kí yín o. Mrs. Oníkòyí ó tójọ́ mẹ́ta o.
Ah,
Mm.
Mrs. Oyolu náà wà ń bẹ̀. Mò ń kí yín mà o.
Oh.
Ẹ káàárọ̀ o.
Everybody o.
Ẹ káàárọ̀
A
o.
kú àná mà.
Thank you very much. Àwa
Okay,
nìyẹn.
adúpẹ́. Mrs.
God bless.
Sanyaolu, good
Káàárọ̀ mà.
morning. Ẹ ǹlẹ́ jàre ẹ káàárọ̀.
Ẹ káàárọ̀. Yes, ma.
Àlẹ́ ó dàbọ̀ ó. Ẹ
Mrs.
kí mi o.
Ẹ kú àná mà.
And Mrs. Adelaja,
Ẹ káàárọ̀
a
mà.
kú àná mà. A kú
Adúpẹ́ o.
ẹ ǹlẹ́ mà.
Adúpẹ́.
Miss Odutola, ẹ kú jọ́ mẹ́ta o.
Ìjọ kan pẹ̀lú ma o. Oh,
Thank you, my sister, Miss
Sorry,
Odutola.
ma.
Nice to hear your
Àjẹ
voice.
wave o. God bless
Thank
you
you,
all
Miss
o.
Adelaja, for adding me, for inviting me. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it so
Hey,
much.
we thank God o.
Olúwa dára sí wa o.
Very
Thank
near
God for
yet
good
very
health.
far. Thank you.
Miss Odutola, Auntie Funke. You know they
Oh,
are
yeah.
person now.
Mo ní thank you, ma. Mo ní Sonia yet so
Wọ́n
far.
tẹ̀lé mi náà. Ó yá text address yẹn máa wá. I will give you a surprise. Text it to me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I will.
Boom boom.
Oh, fẹ́ kẹ́
Adekoye
wá jẹ birthday rice ni ẹ bá dá wọn lóhùn.
is well.
Birthday chicken and chicken.
Boom Adekanye, how are you?
I do. I'm on the bicycle exerciser.
Okay. It's well with everyone. No.
Ẹ bá wa kí ètò
Once
ẹ̀tọ́ wọ́n ti
again
palẹ̀
by
mọ́
the grace
Àbújá o.
of God.
Amen.
Olúwa bá wọn ṣiṣẹ́ o.
Amen.
So,
Please,
bye,
So
everyone.
finally,
Bye-bye.
I want to say thank you to everyone once again for joining this call.
Thank
In the
you.
next
Thank you,
2
ma'am.
weeks, we will have another webinar, and that will be on business.
God
Oh,
bless
that would
you.
be
Thank you all
great.
for joining. God bless you. Have a
God bless you.
beautiful holiday. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.